Japanese people think casting white actors for the American live-action Ghost in the Shell movie is racist. Paramount Pictures just dropped the first still of Scarlett Johansson as Major Kusanagi a couple days ago now. Since it caused a bit of a chatter online, I thought I'd give my 2 cents, whether you want it or not, my shit opinion. I still remember when they announced that Hollywood would be adapting Ghost in the Shell into a live-action movie. Obviously, the entire internet collectively shuddered, duly so. Another iconic Japanese anime being raped with a rusty hedge clipper. We all knew that their choices for leading role would be unsavory, to say the least. Personally, I don't particularly like Scarlett Johansson. I find that she mostly mails in her performances, and I don't like her look either too much. I don't think that her look is typically right for either Black Widow or, obviously, for Major Kusanagi. Although, in the case of the Major, the biggest critique is that an Asian character is being whitewashed. Let's face it, Hollywood has a rather bad habit of doing this, and there are so many reasons why they do it, mostly related to business rather than pushing an agenda of white supremacy, which many people, they like to infer conspiracy where there is none. Just all you have to do is ask who benefits and take a closer look at the way they run their business, and it's clear as day. If they're setting it in America, okay, logically, if they're setting it in America, presumably we would expect to see Americanized versions of these characters. That's not me supporting this, by the way. I'm not saying I like it. What I'm doing is I'm playing devil's advocate. So many people oftentimes will critique me on commentaries that I make concerning anything regarding race and the movies, but you have to realize that if you're going to rework it, it's a rework. This is what we're seeing. We're seeing a rework. So if the Japanese adapt something American and they set it in Japan, obviously all the actors are going to be Japanese, and likewise they'll change the characters' names. They'll tweak what they need to tweak. Sort of similar to what Spike Lee did for Oldboy, which, even dropping that name doesn't bode well. So, just to play devil's advocate, but if they still have Japanese names, these characters like Motoko and Bato, that's going to be really, really awkward. And I really don't know why they would do that. And news came out not so long ago. I read something. I'll post this. I'll put the link in the description where they were actually testing ways to sort of, I don't know, through using CGI or prosthetic makeup or what, to sort of Asianize, if that's a phrase you can use, the characters, which, why would you even think to do that? I mean, you want to talk about, I guess, racial conspiracy. Maybe that is evidence of it. So anyway, the source material is Japanese, right? It's been famous in Japan, first as a manga, later as an animated movie, which was very good, and 2 series, which were also very good, and then 2 other movies, one of which I have not seen, but the other one's okay. So the question is, the big question is this. How do the Japanese themselves feel about this, right? So I really wanted to bring my perspective in on this when I saw this, because I was debating whether or not to make this video, and then I just decided, you know what? I have a way of actually adding a sort of unique perspective to this that maybe others, won't bring as a Japanese language learner, and not just offer up my shit opinion as usual. And I know it's shit, but, bear with me. So since many people, quote unquote, usually SJWs, many of the people in the media that you'll see critiquing, the loudest voices that cry racism in this case and whitewashing, often they like to speak on behalf of others without actually being informed of what those other people's opinions actually are, in this case, the Japanese people. I've read things that's words to the effect of, what a grave insult this is to those people. And so I decided, let me ask them, what do they think? Because I have an outlet where I can actually express this question and get a fair amount of feedback. So I decided to put this question to some actual Japanese people using an app that I often use for language learning called Hello Talk. It's pretty good. If you're into language learning, you might want to look into that. I don't endorse them, but it's a good app. So I'm just throwing that out there. So just cutting to the heart of the matter, this is what I wrote in my post. Hollywood is currently making a live-action Ghost in the Shell movie. The actors are majority white actors. Recently, many Americans, particularly of college age, have been saying, this is racist. So I want to ask, what are all of your opinions? Do you think there is any discrimination? And in their own words, for the most part, I'll have to translate some of this. This is what they had to say. So our first commenter says, I don't think it's racism just because the actors and actresses are white people. Interesting perspective. Here's the second commenter. I've never thought about racism while living in Japan. I've just never really considered about the difference between skin colors. Well, it must be nice to live in a homogeneous society. Don't really have to think about racial strife. Although Japanese don't typically have a stellar reputation for not being xenophobes. Here we go. So this is someone who actually does see some racism. It's kind of racist. Blacks and Asians exist as well. So I think it's weird, lol. I don't really care. When all the actors are white, people complain about it. But when it's all black or yellow color, their words, not mine, they don't say anything, and I find that weird. So I guess clearly Japanese people have their own opinions. Here's our last commenter. There was a slew of comments, but they more or less mirrored the same things. I decided to choose the comments which were most that were longer than a sentence long, so that we could really get an idea of some really in-depth descriptions of and thoughts. So the last commenter says, I would be more likely to watch this movie if it's Scarlett Johansson. But if it were a Japanese actress, I probably wouldn't watch it. I'm less interested in a Japanese actress. Can Hollywood even make a movie with an all-Asian cast and still have global appeal? This is the way of the free market. Why would they undercut their product's value? So that one really struck me because this is actually a point that I've made in another video about business interests and the way audiences will react when they're shown various actors and actresses. And so star power has something to say about it, and things being what they are, like I'm not trying to excuse anything, but I just find it very interesting. So there was a bit more to this person's comment, which I skipped over, but I just wanted to present what was pertinent to the point here. All in all, most of them didn't seem to mind, but you have to take into consideration that the kind of country they come from, there isn't a whole lot of racial diversity, so they're not really acquainted with it. They don't feel slighted by being ignored because anytime they turn on the TV, yes, they do see people who look just like them. So it's not like they live in a country where their own faces are not represented. So they don't feel that maybe that gap that certain individuals in the United States might. Like anytime they turn on the TV, they see Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise doesn't look like me, so I can't relate to this character or whatever feelings that people have. And we're also talking about a country that regularly does this kind of thing, which they took some heat for, especially this one. And I don't know why this Obama one didn't take as much heat, but again, it's to me as an American, and I'm not what you would really call a PC person or very sensitive to these things, but even I actually saw that and went, "Wow, that sure is something." But you can't really tell these people what to do in their own country, and I guess maybe that also contributes to why maybe a lot of them don't say anything, or maybe they don't feel any offense. I don't know. But that's my 2 cents. I wanted to offer that. I thought it was pretty interesting. And, my personal opinion on it is I wish that they would work. Well, actually, I wish more often that Hollywood would work with, in this case, if they're adapting anime, I wish they would actually work with a Japanese studio and do it justice and even use subtitles and film it in Japanese. Like, that doesn't bother me, but again, the bottom line is business. And if they want to make money around the world, They make business decisions that they think are going to bring in the most box office draw, and unfortunately, that's just art takes a back seat, and representation takes a back seat, and so you end up undercutting, a beautiful piece of graphic literature, unfortunately.